The cards fell silent on the worn table as Abram Hawthorne laid down his winning hand. And across from him, the weasel-faced man named Silas Crawley went pale as winter snow. It was late spring in 1883, and the saloon in Randsburg, California was thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of whiskey that had seen better days. Abram had ridden down from his mountain cabin 3 days prior, his pack horse loaded with furs to trade, never expecting that this particular game would change the entire course of his life. He was a big man, well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block out the sun and arms thick with muscle from years of splitting wood, hauling game, and surviving alone in the high country. His dark hair fell past his collar, tied back with a leather cord, and his beard was neatly trimmed despite his solitary existence. At 28 years old, he had the look of someone who had lived hard but lived well, with keen gray eyes that missed nothing. Crawley's hands shook as he pushed back from the table. "I cannot pay," he said, his voice cracking. "I do not have the money." "Then you should not have bet what you could not afford to lose," Abram said, his voice deep and steady. He had no patience for men who wagered beyond their means. He began to reach for the pile of coins and bills in the center of the table. "Wait," Crawley said desperately. "I have something else, something worth more than that pot." Abram raised an eyebrow. "I am listening." "My sister," Crawley said quickly. "She's upstairs. I will give you ownership of her indenture papers. She owes me for her care these past 5 years, and I hold her debt. You can have it. She is young, healthy, can cook and clean." The other men at the table shifted uncomfortably. Abram felt his jaw tighten. He had heard of such arrangements, always despised them. The very idea of treating a human being as property made his blood run hot. But before he could refuse, Crawley continued. "She is blind, but she can work. She is worth more than what is on that table, I swear it. Better than leaving me with nothing." Abram's eyes narrowed. A blind woman, indentured to this snake of a man. He looked at Crawley and saw the desperation there, but also something else. Relief. This man wanted to be rid of his sister, wanted to pass her burden to someone else. "Bring her down," Abram said quietly. "Let me see her." Crawley nearly tripped over himself, hurrying to the stairs. The saloon had gone quiet, all eyes on the mountain man who sat perfectly still, his large hands resting on the table. Abram had no intention of claiming any person as property, but he wanted to see what situation this woman was in. If she was truly trapped in some legal debt to her brother, perhaps he could help her gain freedom. When Crawley returned, he had a woman by the arm, practically dragging her down the stairs. She was small and slight, with long auburn hair that fell in waves past her shoulders. She wore a simple gray dress that had seen better days, and she moved carefully, one hand outstretched slightly. Her face was lovely despite the wariness written across it, with delicate features and full lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes, a striking green, did not focus on anything in particular, confirming her blindness. Abram guessed she was perhaps 22 or 23 years old. "This is Lily," Crawley said, shoving her forward. She stumbled, and Abram was on his feet in an instant, his chair scraping back. He caught her elbow gently, steadying her. "I am Abram," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "Did you know your brother was gambling you away?" Her jaw tightened. "I suspected," she said, her voice soft but clear. "He has threatened it before. I am Lily Oakes. Do you have anywhere else to go? Anyone who would take you in?" She shook her head slightly. "No one. Our parents are dead. Silas has held my papers since I was 18, claiming I owe him for his care after they passed. I have been trying to work off the debt for 5 years, but he keeps adding to it. Food, shelter, clothing, everything has a price that grows faster than I can pay. Abram felt anger rise in his chest, hot and fierce. He had seen many injustices in his life, but this kind of calculated cruelty toward a helpless woman turned his stomach. He looked back at Crawley, who was watching with anxious eyes. "The papers," Abram said. "I want them, properly signed and witnessed." Crawley nodded eagerly and pulled a folded document from his vest. The bartender came over to witness as Crawley signed the document over to Abram, transferring what he claimed was Lily's debt of $300, along with her indenture, to the mountain man. Abram took the papers, folded them carefully, and tucked them into his own vest. Then he gathered his winnings from the table and turned to Lily. "Do you have belongings upstairs?" "A small bag," she said. "Everything I own fits inside it." "I will get it," he said. But she shook her head. "I can manage if you tell me where the stairs are." He admired her independence, but could see how exhausted she was. "The stairs are 3 steps to your right, but I would be honored to accompany you, if you would allow it." Something in his tone must have reassured her because she nodded. He offered his arm, and she took it lightly. Together they climbed the stairs, and she directed him to a small room that was barely more than a closet. Inside was a thin mattress and a canvas bag. He picked up the bag, shocked by how light it was. "This is everything?" "Everything," she confirmed. They descended the stairs together. Abram could feel every eye in the saloon on them. When they reached the bottom, Crawley stepped forward, his expression shifting to something uglier now that the papers were signed. "You will regret this," he said to Lily. "You will see what it is like to work for a real master now, one who will not be as kind as I was." Before Abram could respond, Lily spoke, her voice steady. "You were never kind, Silas. You were cruel and controlling, and you used my blindness as an excuse to treat me as a slave. I am glad to be free of you." Crawley's face flushed red. "You ungrateful." Abram stepped between them, his massive frame blocking Crawley's path to Lily. "You are done speaking to her," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You gambled her away, and you lost. Accept it and move on." Crawley glared up at him, but had enough sense to back down from a man who outweighed him by at least 80 pounds of solid muscle. Abram turned, offered Lily his arm again, and guided her toward the door. "Wait," called one of the other card players, an older man with silver hair. "Hawthorne, what are you planning to do with her?" Abram paused at the door and looked back. "That is between the lady and myself," he said. Then he led Lily out into the cool night air. Outside, Lily took a deep breath, as if she had been holding it for hours. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for getting me out of there." "We need to talk," Abram said, "but not here. My camp is at the edge of town. Can you walk a little farther?" "I can walk," she assured him. He kept his pace slow and steady, warning her of obstacles as they moved through the rutted streets. His camp was simple, just his bedroll and packs near his 2 horses. He had been planning to head back up into the mountains tomorrow, but now everything had changed. He helped her sit on a flat rock near his small fire and added a few sticks to build up the flames. Then he pulled out the indenture papers and, without ceremony, tore them in half. Lily's head turned toward the sound. What was that? "Your debt papers," he said. "They are destroyed. You are free, Miss Oakes. You owe me nothing. You owe no one anything." She sat very still for a long moment. "I do not understand. You paid for those papers. Why would you destroy them?" "Because no human being should be owned by another," he said firmly. What your brother did was legal, perhaps, but it was not right. You are free now. Truly free. He heard her breath catch, and then she pressed her hands to her face. Her shoulders shook, and he realized she was crying. He sat quietly, giving her the privacy of her grief and relief. After a few minutes, she lowered her hands and wiped at her eyes. I have dreamed of this for 5 years, she whispered. Freedom. I thought I would die still in debt to him. You will never be in debt to him again, Abram promised. But we do have a practical problem. You said you have no one and nowhere to go. What would you like to do? I have some money from my furs and my winnings tonight. I could pay for a room for you in town while you decide on your future. Or I could help you travel somewhere if you have a destination in mind. She was quiet for a long time. Her sightless eyes pointed toward the fire. I have no destination, she said finally. No friends, no family except Silas, and I would rather die than return to him. I have no money, no prospects. I can do some work despite my blindness. I can cook, I can clean, I can mend and sew by touch. But finding someone willing to hire a blind woman in a town like this? She shook her head. It will not be easy. Abram considered his options. He lived alone in a cabin high in the mountains, about 2 days' ride from Randsburg. It was a hard life, isolated and demanding. But it was his life, and he loved it. He had built his cabin with his own hands, hunted and trapped for his living, and answered to no one. The idea of bringing someone into that life, especially a woman who could not see, seemed impossible. But as he looked at her sitting there, so small and vulnerable, yet with a core of strength that had allowed her to survive 5 years of her brother's cruelty, he felt something shift inside him. I have a proposition, he said slowly. I live in the mountains, about 2 days from here. I have a cabin, a good one, solid and warm. I live alone and have for years. I hunt, trap, and trade furs. It is not an easy life, but it is a good one. I could use help with the domestic work, the cooking and such. I am adequate at it, but I am no expert. If you wanted to, you could come with me. You would have your own space, your own room. You would be safe and fed and free. In exchange, you could help with the household tasks. I would pay you wages, proper wages, so you could save money for whatever future you want. If at any time you wanted to leave, I would bring you back to civilization and help you get settled wherever you wished. Lily's face turned toward him, her expression unreadable. You would take a blind woman up into the mountains? I would, he said, if you were willing. I will not lie to you and say it would be easy. The journey is rough and the life is isolated. But you would be safe, and you would be free, and you would be treated with respect. Why would you do this? She asked. You do not know me. I know enough, he said. I know you have been treated poorly by someone who should have protected you. I know you have survived it with your dignity intact. I know you are brave enough to speak the truth even when it costs you. That is enough for me. She sat in silence for a long while, her hands folded in her lap. Abram waited patiently, watching the fire and listening to the sounds of the town behind them. How old are you, Mr. Hawthorne? She asked finally. 28, he said, and you may call me Abram. I am 23, she said, and you may call me Lily. She took a deep breath. I will come with you. I will take your offer. I would rather take my chances in the mountains with a stranger who has shown me kindness than stay in this town where my brother might try to reclaim me. He will not, Abram said with certainty. Those papers are destroyed. He has no legal hold on you anymore." "Legal hold? Perhaps not," Lily said quietly. "But Silas does not always concern himself with legality. He might try to take me back by force." Abram's jaw tightened. "Then it is good that we will be far away from here, and it is good that I am not an easy man to fight." They spent the rest of the night by the fire, talking quietly. Abram learned that Lily had not always been blind. She had lost her sight at age 18 due to a fever that had nearly killed her. Her parents had died within a year of each other shortly after, leaving her in Silas's care. He had immediately drawn up the indenture papers, claiming she owed him for her care and upbringing. For 5 years, she had worked in his boarding house, cooking and cleaning and trying desperately to pay off a debt that seemed to only grow larger. "I began to realize last year that he would never let me go," she said quietly. "That he would always find a way to add to the debt. When I confronted him, he laughed and said I should be grateful he gave me a roof over my head at all. Who else would take in a blind woman?" "He was wrong," Abram said firmly. "You are capable and strong. Your blindness is a challenge, not a death sentence." She smiled slightly at that. "You are kind to say so." "I am not kind," he said. "I am honest. There is a difference." As dawn broke over the mountains to the east, Abram packed up his camp. He helped Lily onto his gentler horse, a steady mare named Bess, and tied her bag to the saddle. Then he mounted his own horse, a big gelding named Bear, and took Bess's lead rope. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I am ready," Lily said, and there was something almost like hope in her voice. They rode out of Randsburg as the town was just beginning to wake. Abram took one last look back, making sure no one was following them, and then turned his attention to the trail ahead. The journey would take 2 full days of steady riding, and he wanted to make sure Lily was as comfortable as possible. The first day passed without incident. Abram kept up a steady stream of description, telling Lily about the landscape they were passing through. They left behind the dusty streets of Randsburg and began climbing into the foothills. The desert scrub gave way to scattered pines, and the air grew cooler and cleaner. "The mountains are beautiful this time of year," he told her. "The snow has mostly melted from the lower elevations, and everything is green. There are wildflowers everywhere, yellow and purple and white. The sky is so blue it almost hurts to look at." "I remember blue sky," Lily said softly. "I remember colors. Sometimes I dream in color still." They stopped for lunch by a small stream, and Abram helped Lily down from her horse. He had packed bread and cheese and dried meat, and they ate sitting on flat rocks by the water. "The stream is about 3 feet to your left," he told her, "if you want to wash your hands or face." She made her way carefully to the water, and he watched, ready to help if she needed it, but allowing her the independence she clearly valued. She was more capable than he had expected, moving with care, but not fear. That night they made camp in a small clearing. Abram set up his bedroll for Lily and made himself a bed from his saddle blanket and coat. He built a fire and cooked a simple meal of beans and bacon. As they ate, Lily asked him about his life. "I was raised on a farm in Missouri," he told her. "My father was a hard man, quick with his fists. My mother was quiet, beaten down by life. I had 2 sisters, both younger. When I was 19, I could not take it anymore. I left and headed west. I worked as a ranch hand for a while, then as a logger. Eventually, I made my way up into these mountains and decided to stay. I built my cabin 7 years ago. It is remote, but it is mine, and no one tells me what to do." "Do you see your family?" Lily asked. "No," he said. "I sent letters for the first few years, but I never received replies. I do not know if they were ignored or if my family moved and the letters never reached them. Either way, that life is behind me now. I am sorry, Lily said. It must be lonely. Sometimes, he admitted, but I prefer loneliness to cruelty. In the mountains, I answer only to myself and to nature. It is an honest life. She nodded, seeming to understand. They talked long into the night, and Abram found himself enjoying her company more than he had expected. She was intelligent and thoughtful, with a quiet sense of humor that emerged once she began to relax around him. When she finally grew tired, he made sure she was comfortable in the bedroll, and then settled down on his own makeshift bed, his rifle close at hand. The second day of travel was more challenging. They climbed higher into the mountains, and the trail grew steeper and rockier. Abram kept Bess on a tight lead, making sure the mare navigated the difficult sections safely. Lily held onto the saddle horn, her face pale but determined. "We are almost there," Abram told her as the afternoon sun began to slant through the tall pines. "Another hour, maybe less. I trust you," Lily said simply, and those 3 words warmed him more than he wanted to admit. When they finally arrived at his cabin, Abram felt an odd sense of nervousness. He had never brought anyone here before, never shared this space that was so completely his own. The cabin was set in a beautiful meadow, surrounded by tall pines and with a clear stream running nearby. It was a single large room with a loft above, solidly built from logs he had cut and notched himself. There was a stone fireplace, a sturdy table and chairs, a bed in one corner, and shelves lined with supplies and equipment. He helped Lily down from her horse and guided her to the cabin door. "There are 2 steps up," he told her. "The door is oak, thick and strong. The threshold is smooth." Inside, he lit a lantern and began to describe the space to her. He walked her around the entire cabin, letting her touch the walls, the table, the chairs, everything. She ran her fingers over the smooth logs, the carefully chinked walls. "You built this yourself?" she asked, awe in her voice. "Every inch," he said with quiet pride. "It took me a full summer, but it was worth it. It is warm in winter and cool in summer. The roof does not leak, and the walls are strong enough to keep out any predator." "It is wonderful," she said. "I can tell just from touching it. You are skilled with your hands." He felt his face warm at the compliment. "I do my best. Now, I promised you your own space. The loft above has a separate area that I use for storage, but I can clear it out and make it into a proper bedroom for you. It will take me a day or 2, but I can build a partition for privacy and make you a bed frame. For tonight, you can take the bed down here, and I will sleep in the loft." "I do not want to take your bed," Lily protested. "You are taking it," he said firmly. "You have been riding for 2 days, and you are exhausted. I will not have you sleeping on the floor when there is a perfectly good bed available." She started to argue, but he could see she was indeed exhausted. Finally, she nodded. "Just for tonight," she said. "Tomorrow we will work out a better arrangement." He showed her where the bed was, helped her find the chamber pot behind a curtain in the corner, and then set about making them a proper meal. He had a good store of supplies, including flour, sugar, coffee, and dried goods. He also had a root cellar dug into the hillside behind the cabin, where he kept potatoes, carrots, and onions. He made a stew with venison from his stores, thick and hearty, and fresh biscuits in his cast-iron pan. As they ate, Lily asked him more about his life in the mountains. He told her about his trap lines, about the animals he hunted, about the rhythm of the seasons up here. Winter was long and harsh, but he was always well prepared. Spring brought mud and melting snow. Summer was beautiful, but all too short. Fall was his favorite, with the aspens turning gold and the elk bugling in the high meadows. "It sounds beautiful," Lily said wistfully. "I wish I could see it." "I will do my best to help you see it through my words," Abram promised, "and through your other senses. The mountains are not just beautiful to look at. They smell like pine and clean air. They sound like running water and wind through the trees and the calls of birds and animals. They feel like sunshine on your face and cool breezes and soft grass under your feet." She smiled at that, a real smile that lit up her face. "Thank you, Abram, for everything, for rescuing me, for bringing me here, for treating me like a person and not a burden." "You are not a burden," he said gruffly. "You are a person, and you deserve to be treated as such." That night, after Lily had settled into the bed, Abram climbed up to the loft and lay on a pile of furs. He could hear her breathing below him, soft and even. He stared up at the dark ceiling and wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had lived alone for so long, he was not sure he remembered how to live with another person. But there was something about Lily that drew him, something beyond her obvious vulnerability. She was strong and determined, and she faced her challenges with courage. He found himself wanting to protect her, to make sure she was safe and happy. It was a dangerous feeling, he knew. He could not afford to become attached. She was here temporarily, until she figured out what she wanted to do with her life. Once she had some money saved, she would want to leave, to go somewhere with more people and more opportunities. He needed to remember that and guard his heart accordingly. But as he drifted off to sleep, his last thought was of her smile and the way she had said she trusted him. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable routine. Abram spent the first few days building a proper room for Lily in the loft. He constructed a sturdy bed frame and stuffed a mattress with fresh pine needles and soft moss. He built a partition for privacy and added a small window that let in light and air. He made her a trunk for her belongings and a small table and chair. By the time he was done, the space was cozy and private. Lily, meanwhile, began to learn the layout of the cabin and the surrounding area. Abram was patient, walking her through the space over and over, letting her memorize the number of steps between locations, the feel of different surfaces, the sounds that indicated where she was. She was a quick learner, and within a week, she could move around the cabin with confidence. She took over the cooking and was far better at it than Abram had ever been. She made bread that was light and fluffy, stews that were rich and flavorful, and pies from dried fruit that made his mouth water. She cleaned and organized, and suddenly the cabin felt like a home instead of just a shelter. Abram was careful to maintain proper boundaries. He treated her with respect, never entering her space without permission, never touching her without warning. But he found himself increasingly aware of her presence, the sound of her humming as she worked, the way she laughed at his dry jokes, the graceful way she moved once she was comfortable in her surroundings. One morning, about 3 weeks after their arrival, Abram came back from checking his trap lines to find Lily outside the cabin. She was sitting on the bench he had built near the door, her face turned up to the sun. "Good morning," he called, not wanting to startle her. She smiled. "Good morning. How are the traps?" "3 rabbits and a mink," he said, holding up his game bag. "A good haul?" "Rabbit stew for dinner, then," she said. "I found some wild onions growing near the stream. I was very careful," she added quickly. "I did not go far, and I counted my steps just as you taught me." He felt a swell of pride at her independence, but also a flicker of worry. The stream can be dangerous. The rocks are slippery. I know, she said patiently. I was careful, Abram. I am blind, not helpless. He sighed. I know you are not helpless. I just worry. Why? She asked, tilting her head. You barely know me. I know you well enough, he said gruffly. You have been through enough hardship. I would not want to see you hurt on my watch. She smiled softly. Your watch. Is that what this is? He felt his face warm. You know what I mean. I do, she said, and I appreciate it. But Abram, I need to be able to do things for myself. I need to feel useful and capable. I have spent 5 years being told I was a burden, that I was useless because of my blindness. I need to prove, at least to myself, that I am more than that. He sat down beside her on the bench, his large frame making the wood creak. You are more than that, he said firmly. You are strong and capable and brave. I have seen that every day since we met. But strength does not mean you have to do everything alone. It is all right to accept help sometimes. I know, she said quietly. And I do accept your help. I could not have made it here without you. But I also need to be able to contribute, to pull my own weight. You do contribute, he said. The cabin has never been cleaner or more organized. The food has never been better. You do more than pull your weight, Lily. She turned her face toward him, and he could see the shine of unshed tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea how much it means to hear that. Without thinking, he reached out and took her hand. It was small and delicate in his large, calloused palm. You are welcome here for as long as you want to stay, he said. I want you to know that. This is your home now, if you want it to be. She squeezed his hand gently. I do want it to be, she said. I have never felt as safe or as free as I do here. They sat together in comfortable silence, hands linked, and Abram felt something shift between them. It was not friendship exactly, though they were certainly becoming friends. It was something deeper, something that made his heart beat faster and his breath catch in his throat. He was falling for her, he realized. This brave, beautiful woman who had come into his life so unexpectedly. It was dangerous and foolish, and he knew he should pull back, should maintain his distance. But as she smiled at him, her face radiant in the morning sun, he knew it was already too late. As spring turned to summer, the bond between them grew stronger. Abram taught Lily the sounds of the mountains, the different bird calls, the rustle of wind through different types of trees. He took her on short walks, always keeping her hand in his or her arm through his, describing everything they passed. She loved the wildflower meadow best, and he would sit with her there in the afternoons when his work was done, telling her about the colors, the patterns, the way the butterflies danced from bloom to bloom. She would touch the flowers gently, running her fingers over the soft petals, breathing in their scent. I remember flowers, she said one afternoon as they sat in the meadow. My mother had a garden, roses mostly. I remember the smell. What else do you remember? Abram asked. About seeing, I mean. She was quiet for a moment, thinking. I remember my mother's face, my father's. Silas, when he was younger and kinder, before our parents died. I remember the color of the sky, the way sunlight looked on water. I remember fireflies on summer nights, and the way snow looked falling past a window. She paused. Sometimes I am afraid I will forget. It has been 5 years now. The memories fade a little more each year. Tell me about them, Abram said. The memories. Keep them alive by speaking them. So she did. She told him about her childhood, about the small farm where she had grown up, about her parents who had loved her but had struggled with poverty. She told him about learning to read, about her love of stories, about the dreams she had once had of becoming a teacher. That could still happen, Abram said. There are schools for the blind, places where you could learn methods for teaching without sight. She shook her head. That requires money I do not have and probably never will. You are earning wages here, he reminded her. I have been keeping track. By the end of summer, you will have a nice sum saved up. She turned her face toward him, surprised. You have been paying me? Of course I have, he said somewhat defensively. I told you I would pay you proper wages. Did you think I was lying? No, I forgot. I have been so happy here it does not feel like work. His heart squeezed at that. Well, it is work, and you deserve to be paid for it. I have been putting money aside for you. It is yours to do with as you please. She reached out, and he took her hand automatically now, the gesture as natural as breathing. Thank you, Abram, for everything. You have given me back my life. You did that yourself, he said. I just gave you a safe place to land. As summer deepened, Abram found himself looking for excuses to spend more time with Lily. He would finish his work early and come back to the cabin, where they would sit together and talk for hours. He taught her to fish, guiding her hands to hold the pole, telling her when to pull. Her delighted laugh when she caught her first trout was the best sound he had ever heard. She taught him patience and how to see the world through new eyes. She made him describe things in ways he never had before, made him pay attention to details he had always taken for granted. She challenged him when she thought he was being overprotective and thanked him when she needed help. She was the perfect balance of independent and willing to accept support. One evening in late July, they were sitting outside after dinner, watching the sun set. Abram was describing the colors to her, the way the sky turned from blue to gold to pink to purple. It sounds beautiful, Lily said softly. It is, he agreed, but not as beautiful as you. The words were out before he could stop them. He felt his face flush hot, and he was grateful she could not see his embarrassment. Lily went very still. Abram, she said quietly. What did you say? He could have backed down, could have claimed she misheard, but he was not a man who lied or hid from difficult truths. I said you are beautiful, he repeated. More beautiful than any sunset. I am sorry if that makes you uncomfortable. I know I am just the rough mountain man who won you in a card game and brought you up here to work as a housekeeper. I know I have no right to have feelings for you. But I do. I have been fighting them for weeks now. But I cannot anymore. I care about you, Lily. More than I should, more than is probably wise. She turned to face him fully, her hands folded in her lap. Why do you think you have no right to have feelings for me? He gestured at himself, even though she could not see it. Look at me. I am a hermit who lives alone in the mountains. I have no education, no refinement. I am rough and scarred and not fit company for a woman like you. A woman like me? She repeated, her voice rising slightly. Abram, I am a blind woman who was gambled away by her own brother. I have no education beyond basic reading and writing. I have no money, no family, no prospects. What exactly makes me so much better than you? You are kind and gentle and good, he said. You deserve someone who can give you a proper life, not a cabin in the middle of nowhere. She stood up abruptly, her hands clenched at her sides. Do not tell me what I deserve, she said, her voice shaking. Do not make decisions about my life without consulting me. I have had enough of that from Silas. If you have feelings for me, then say so clearly. If you want me to leave, then say that too. But do not hide behind some false idea of what I deserve." He stood as well, his heart pounding. "I do not want you to leave," he said. "I want you to stay. I want you to stay forever. I have fallen in love with you, Lily. Completely, hopelessly in love with you. But I am terrified that I am trapping you here, that you are staying because you feel you have no other choice, not because you want to." She took a step toward him, her hand outstretched. He took it immediately, pulling her closer. She reached up with her other hand, finding his face, tracing the lines of his jaw, his cheekbones, his brow. "I know what you look like now," she said softly. "I have memorized your face with my fingers. I know you are tall and broad and strong. I know your hair is long and your beard is soft. I know your hands are rough from work, but gentle when you touch me. I know your voice is deep and makes me feel safe. I know you are the kindest, most honorable man I have ever met. And I have fallen in love with you too, Abram Hawthorne. Not because I have no other choice, but because you are the first person in 5 years to treat me like I matter. You are the first person to see me as Lily, not as a blind woman. You make me feel capable and strong and cherished. How could I not love you?" He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. She fit perfectly there, her head tucked under his chin. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "I need you to be sure, Lily. I could not bear it if you changed your mind later, if you regretted this." She pulled back just enough to tilt her face up toward his. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "Kiss me, Abram. Please." He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to change her mind. But she did not pull away. Instead, she rose up on her toes to meet him. Their lips met softly, tentatively at first, and then with growing confidence and passion. He cupped her face in his hands, marveling at how small and delicate she was, how perfectly she fit against him. She wrapped her arms around his neck, her fingers threading through his long hair. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Abram rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed, savoring the moment. "I love you," he said again, needing to say the words, needing her to hear them. "I love you too," she replied, her voice full of joy and wonder. They spent the rest of the evening in each other's arms, talking about the future, making plans. Abram wanted to marry her, wanted to make their union official and proper. Lily agreed, her face glowing with happiness. "We will have to go down to Randsburg to find a preacher," Abram said. "I do not like the idea of taking you back there, but it is the closest town." "I will be fine," Lily assured him. "You will be with me, and I am not the same frightened woman I was when we left. I am stronger now, thanks to you." They decided to wait until late August, after the summer heat had broken. In the meantime, Abram threw himself into preparing for their future. He expanded the cabin, adding a second room that could serve as a bedroom. He built proper furniture, a wardrobe, and a chest of drawers. He even carved a headboard for the bed, decorating it with simple but elegant designs. Lily sewed new curtains and quilts, her fingers flying over the fabric with practiced ease. She was happy, truly happy, in a way Abram had never seen before. She sang as she worked, and her laughter filled the cabin. They were careful to maintain propriety, Lily sleeping in her loft room and Abram in the new bedroom below. But there were stolen kisses and long embraces, promises whispered in the dark. Abram had never been happier in his entire life. In late August, They packed supplies and began the journey back down to Randsburg. Abram was tense as they approached the town, his eyes scanning constantly for any sign of trouble. He had his rifle within easy reach and his revolver on his hip. They arrived in the early evening and went straight to the small church at the edge of town. The preacher, a kind-faced man named Reverend Mitchell, agreed to perform the ceremony the next morning. Abram paid for a room at the hotel, 2 rooms actually, to maintain propriety until after the wedding. That night, Abram made sure Lily was safely settled in her room, and then he went to have a drink at the saloon. He wanted to gauge the mood of the town, to see if Silas Crawley was still around, and if there would be any trouble. He had been at the bar for about 20 minutes when the trouble he had been worried about walked through the door. Silas Crawley, looking meaner and more desperate than ever, spotted Abram immediately. He stormed over, 3 men trailing behind him. "Hawthorne," Crawley snarled, "I want my sister back." Abram set down his whiskey carefully and turned to face the smaller man. "She is not your sister anymore," he said calmly. "She is her own woman, and soon she will be my wife." Crawley's face turned purple with rage. "You have no right to her. I was tricked into signing those papers. The game was rigged." "The game was fair," said a voice from the corner. The silver-haired man who had witnessed the card game stood up. "I was there, Crawley. You lost fair and square, and you signed over the papers willingly. You have no claim on the girl." "She owes me," Crawley insisted. 5 years of care and feeding. She cannot just walk away from that debt. "The debt was paid when you signed the papers," Abram said, his voice hard. "You have no legal or moral claim on her. Leave it alone, Crawley, before this gets ugly." "It is already ugly," Crawley said. He nodded to the men behind him. "You are going to give her back, or we are going to take her back." Abram stood to his full height, his massive frame dwarfing everyone in the room. "You can try," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "But I promise you, it will be over my dead body." The 3 men with Crawley suddenly looked a lot less certain. Abram was bigger than all of them combined, and he had the look of a man who knew how to use his fists. The bartender had already moved away, not wanting to be caught in the middle. "This is not over," Crawley spat. "She is my property, and I will have her back." "She is not property," Abram said. "She is a human being with rights and dignity, and she is under my protection now. If you come near her, if you even look at her wrong, I will make you regret it. Do you understand me?" Crawley glared at him for a long moment, then turned and stalked out of the saloon, his men following. The silver-haired man came over to Abram. "That man is trouble," he said. "You watch your back, Hawthorne. He is not the type to let things go." "I know," Abram said grimly, "but I meant what I said. He will have to go through me to get to her." He left the saloon and went back to the hotel, checking on Lily before going to his own room. He did not tell her about the confrontation, not wanting to worry her before their wedding day. But he slept lightly, his hand on his revolver, ready for trouble. The next morning dawned clear and beautiful. Abram dressed in his best clothes, a clean white shirt and dark trousers, his hair neatly combed and tied back. He knocked on Lily's door and heard her soft invitation to enter. She was standing by the window, wearing a simple dress of pale blue that he had bought for her in town the day before. Her auburn hair was loose around her shoulders, shining in the morning light. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "How do I look?" she asked nervously. "Like an angel," he said honestly. "You are perfect, Lily." She smiled, her whole face lighting up. "I wish I could see you," she said, "but I can imagine. I know you must look very handsome." He crossed the room and took her hands. Are you ready to do this? To marry a rough mountain man and spend your life in the wilderness? I am ready to marry the man I love, she corrected. And I am ready to build a life with you, wherever that may be. They walked together to the church, and Reverend Mitchell performed a simple but a heartfelt ceremony. Abram spoke his vows clearly and firmly, promising to love and cherish Lily for the rest of his days. Lily's voice shook with emotion as she made the same promises. When the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, Abram kissed her gently, sealing their union. As they left the church, Abram's senses were on high alert. He kept Lily close, his arm around her waist. They were halfway back to the hotel when he saw Crawley and his men approaching. "Stay behind me," Abram told Lily quietly. She heard the tension in his voice and obeyed without question. Crawley stopped about 10 feet away, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. "Last chance, Hawthorne. Give her back." "Never," Abram said. "She is my wife now, legally and in the eyes of God. You have no claim on her." "I will not ask again," Crawley said, his hand moving to draw his gun. Everything happened very fast. Abram shoved Lily toward the wall of the nearest building, out of the line of fire. Crawley's gun cleared leather, but Abram was already moving. He was not as fast on the draw, but he was accurate, and his first shot took Crawley in the shoulder, spinning him around. The gun fell from Crawley's hand, and he collapsed to the ground, cursing. The 3 men with Crawley backed away, hands raised. "We do not want any trouble," one of them said quickly. "Crawley hired us, but we are not getting paid enough to die for him." The town sheriff came running, drawn by the sound of gunfire. He took in the scene quickly, recognizing Abram from his previous visits to town. "What happened here?" the sheriff demanded. The silver-haired man from the saloon had followed them and now stepped forward. "Crawley drew first, Sheriff. I saw the whole thing. Hawthorne was defending his wife." The sheriff looked at Crawley, who was clutching his bleeding shoulder. "Silas Crawley, you are under arrest for attempted murder. You are lucky to be alive, you fool." He looked at Abram. "You are free to go, Hawthorne. Self-defense clear as day." Abram holstered his gun and turned to Lily, who was pale but composed. "Are you all right?" he asked, checking her over for injuries. "I am fine," she said, though her hands were shaking. "Is it over?" "It is over," he assured her, pulling her into his arms. "He cannot hurt you now. He will be in jail, and even if he gets out, he knows better than to come after us again." They left Randsburg that same day, both eager to return to the peace and safety of the mountains. As they rode away, Lily was quiet, processing everything that had happened. "I am sorry you had to do that," she said finally. "Shoot him, I mean. I know that is not who you are." "I am a man who protects what is his," Abram said. "And you are mine now, just as I am yours. I will always protect you, Lily. Always." She reached back and squeezed his hand, which was wrapped around her waist as they rode together on Bear. "I know," she said, "and I love you for it." The journey back to the cabin was peaceful, and by the time they arrived, both had left the violence of Randsburg behind. This was their home now, their sanctuary. They carried their bags inside, and Abram started a fire while Lily unpacked. That night, as man and wife, they finally came together in the intimate way they had both been dreaming of. Abram was gentle and patient, mindful of Lily's innocence. She was nervous but willing, trusting him completely. He took his time, making sure she felt safe and cherished. And when they finally joined together, it was with love and tenderness. Afterward, They lay tangled together in the big bed, Lily's head on Abram's chest, his arms wrapped around her. "I never knew it could be like this," Lily whispered. "So beautiful and right." "It is because we love each other," Abram said, stroking her hair. "That makes all the difference." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, and Abram slept more peacefully than he had in years. The autumn that followed was the happiest time of either of their lives. They settled into married life with ease, their routines blending seamlessly. Abram continued his hunting and trapping, but now he had Lily to come home to, a warm cabin and a delicious meal and loving arms. Lily thrived in her role as wife and homemaker, taking pride in keeping their home comfortable and welcoming. As the weather cooled and the leaves turned gold, Abram began preparing for winter. He cut and stacked cords of firewood, smoked and salted meat, made sure all the chinks in the cabin walls were sealed tight. Lily helped with the preserving, making jams and pickles from the wild berries and vegetables they had gathered over the summer. One evening in October, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Lily made an announcement that stopped Abram's heart. "I am with child," she said softly, her hand resting on her still flat belly. "I am almost certain." Abram stared at her, stunned into silence. A baby. Their baby. The idea filled him with a joy so intense it was almost painful. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor," she said. "I have missed my monthly courses, and I have been feeling unwell in the mornings. I think the baby will come in late spring." He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of glass. "A baby," he whispered. "We are going to have a baby." She laughed, a sound full of joy. "Yes, we are. Are you happy?" "Happy does not begin to cover it," he said. "I am terrified and thrilled and completely overwhelmed. A father. I am going to be a father. And I am going to be a mother," Lily said, wonder in her voice. "I never thought I would have this. A husband, a home, a child. It is more than I ever dreamed possible." They spent the evening making plans, talking about the baby, imagining what he or she would be like. Abram immediately became even more protective, insisting that Lily not overwork herself, that she rest whenever she was tired. She tolerated his fussing with good humor, knowing it came from a place of love. The winter was long and cold, but the cabin was warm and cozy. Abram made sure they had everything they needed and rarely left Lily alone for more than a few hours at a time. He was constantly checking on her, making sure she was warm enough, comfortable enough, eating enough. She teased him about it, but secretly she loved his attentiveness. As her belly grew, Abram would talk to the baby, his large hand resting on the swell of her stomach. He told the baby about the mountains, about the life they would have together. Lily would listen, her heart full to bursting with love for this man who had saved her and then given her the world. In early March, as the snow began to melt, Abram made a trip down to Randsburg to purchase supplies they would need for the birth. He bought soft cloths and blankets, a cradle that he carefully packed on his horse. He also brought back news. Silas Crawley was tried and sent to prison. He told Lily, 5 years for attempted murder. You do not have to worry about him anymore. She let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Good," she said. "I am glad it is truly over." As Lily's time drew near, Abram brought in help. There was a woman who lived about a day's ride away, a midwife named Mrs. Hargrove, who had delivered half the babies in the mountain settlements. She came a week before Lily's due date and stayed in the loft, ready to assist when the time came. The baby came on a warm day in late May, after a labor that lasted through the night and into the morning. Abram stayed by Lily's side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her brow, whispering encouragement. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced, Mrs. Hargrove announced it was a boy. "A son," Abram said, his voice choked with emotion. "We have a son." Lily held out her arms, and Mrs. Hargrove placed the baby in them. Lily ran her fingers over the tiny face, the soft hair, the miniature hands and feet. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "He is perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "He has your hair," Abram told her, "and your nose. But I think he has my stubborn chin." They named him Thomas, after Lily's father. He was a healthy, happy baby with a good set of lungs and an appetite that kept Lily busy. Abram was a devoted father from the first moment, holding his son with a gentleness that belied his size, singing to him in his deep voice, rocking him to sleep. As Thomas grew, Lily proved to be a wonderful mother. Her blindness did not hinder her at all. She could tell by the sound of his cry whether he was hungry, tired, or just wanted attention. She could feel his temperature with a touch of her hand, could soothe him with the sound of her voice. Abram watched in amazement as she cared for their son with confidence and skill. The years that followed were full and rich. Thomas grew into a strong, healthy boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's auburn hair. He was bright and curious, and Abram taught him about the mountains, about hunting and tracking and surviving in the wilderness. Lily taught him to be kind and gentle, to value people over possessions, to see with his heart as well as his eyes. When Thomas was 3, a daughter arrived, whom they named Margaret after Abram's mother. She was quieter than her brother, more serious, with dark hair and Abram's strong features. 2 years later, another son was born, named Samuel. He was a happy baby who rarely cried and who seemed to find joy in everything. The cabin had to be expanded again to accommodate the growing family. Abram built 2 more rooms, one for the boys and one for Margaret. He also built a larger table, more chairs, more beds. The cabin that had once been a lonely bachelor's retreat was now a bustling family home filled with laughter and love. Lily bloomed in her role as wife and mother. She was happy and confident, her days full of purpose and meaning. The children never saw her blindness as a limitation because she never treated it as one. She taught them by example that challenges could be overcome, that disabilities did not define a person. Abram watched his family grow with a sense of profound gratitude. He had been so alone for so long, and now he had everything he had never dared to dream of. A wife who loved him, children who adored him, a home full of warmth and life. On a warm summer evening, when Thomas was 10, Margaret was 7, and Samuel was 5, the family sat outside together watching the sun set. Abram had his arm around Lily, and the children were sprawled on the grass, pointing out shapes in the clouds. "Tell me about the sunset," Lily said to Abram, as she had hundreds of times before. "It is gold and orange today," he said. "The clouds are streaked with pink and purple. The mountains are dark silhouettes against the sky. It is beautiful, but not as beautiful as you." She laughed and swatted his arm playfully. "You always say that." "Because it is always true," he replied, kissing her temple. Thomas looked back at his parents and grinned. "You two are sappy," he said. "Sappy is good," Abram told his son. "You should always let the people you love know how you feel about them. Life is too short for regrets." As the sun sank below the horizon and the first stars appeared, Lily rested her head on Abram's shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Taking me in that night, changing your whole life?" He looked down at her, at this woman who had transformed his existence in ways he could never have imagined. "Not for a single second," he said firmly. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Lily. You and our children. You gave me a life worth living." "You gave me the same," she said. "You saved me in every way a person can be saved. I love you, Abram Hawthorne." "I love you too, Lily Hawthorne," he replied. "Always have, always will." The children groaned at their parents' display of affection, but they were smiling. They had grown up surrounded by love, and they knew how lucky they were. As the years continued to pass, the Hawthorne family remained close and loving. Thomas grew into a man much like his father, tall and strong and honorable. He eventually married a young woman from one of the neighboring homesteads and built his own cabin nearby. Margaret became a teacher, fulfilling the dream her mother had once had for herself. She taught children in a small school in Randsburg, riding down from the mountains at the beginning of each school year and returning home for summers and holidays. Samuel took over his father's trap lines, loving the mountains as much as Abram did. Abram and Lily grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. Abram's hair turned silver, and lines appeared around Lily's eyes. But to each other, they were still the young couple who had fallen in love that first summer in the mountains. On a crisp autumn day, when Abram was 62 and Lily was 57, they sat together on the porch of their cabin, wrapped in a quilt, watching their grandchildren play in the meadow. Thomas had 3 children now, Margaret had 2, and Samuel had just welcomed his first. "We have been blessed," Lily said softly, her hand in Abram's. "More than blessed," Abram agreed. "We have been given a miracle." "Do you remember that night in Randsburg?" Lily asked, "when you won me in that poker game?" "I remember every detail," Abram said. "I remember thinking that Crawley was a weasel and that I was going to free you from him no matter what it took." "I remember being terrified," Lily admitted. "I did not know what would happen to me. And then you tore up those papers and told me I was free. That was the moment I started to fall in love with you, I think." "It took you that long," Abram teased. "I fell in love with you the moment you spoke up to your brother in that saloon. You were so brave." She laughed. "We have had a good life, have we not?" "The best life," Abram confirmed. "And it is not over yet. We have many more years together." She squeezed his hand. "Many more years," she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the laughter of their grandchildren, feeling the warmth of the sun on their faces, savoring the peace and contentment that came from a life well lived and love well shared. Abram thought back to that young man who had ridden down from the mountains all those years ago, lonely and isolated, thinking he preferred it that way. He had been so wrong. Life was not meant to be lived alone. It was meant to be shared with someone you loved, someone who challenged you and supported you and made every day brighter just by existing. Lily had given him that. She had given him everything. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For what?" Lily asked. "For taking a chance on a rough mountain man," he said. "For trusting me when you had no reason to. For loving me. For giving me this life." She turned her face toward him, and even though she could not see him, he felt the full weight of her love in her expression. "Thank you for saving me," she said. "For seeing me when I felt invisible. For making me feel strong and capable and loved. Thank you for being exactly who you are." He kissed her then, a soft, gentle kiss that held decades of love and devotion. Their grandchildren saw and giggled, but Abram and Lily did not care. They had never been afraid to show their love, and they were not about to start now. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the family gathered together. Thomas and his wife brought out food, and they all shared a meal on the porch. 3 generations of Hawthornes together. There was laughter and teasing and the comfortable warmth of family. When the meal was finished and the children were playing again, Margaret sat down next to her mother. "Mother, will you tell us the story again? About how you and Father met?" Lily smiled. "You have heard that story 100 times. We never get tired of it," Samuel said, joining them. "It is the best story." So Lily told it again, with Abram adding details here and there. She told about the poker game, about Silas gambling her away, about Abram tearing up the papers and setting her free. She told about the journey to the mountains, about learning to navigate her new home, about falling in love with the man who had given her a second chance at life. The children and grandchildren listened, enthralled as always. It was a story of courage and love, of second chances and new beginnings. It was a story that proved that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best, if we are brave enough to take the leap. When the story was finished, little Sarah, Thomas's youngest daughter, climbed into Abram's lap. "Grandfather, were you scared when you had to shoot that bad man?" Abram considered the question carefully. "I was scared," he admitted. "Not of the fight, but of what might happen to your grandmother if I failed. But I knew I had to protect her, so I did what needed to be done." "You are a hero," Sarah said decisively. Abram shook his head. "No, sweetheart. I am just a man who loves his wife. Your grandmother is the real hero. She survived things that would have broken most people, and she did it with grace and strength." Lily reached over and took his hand. "We saved each other," she said. "That is the truth of it. We were both lost, and we found each other." As the evening deepened and the stars came out, the family slowly dispersed. Thomas and his family returned to their cabin, Margaret to her room in the house, Samuel to his own small place near the trap lines. Eventually, it was just Abram and Lily again, sitting on their porch, the night air cool and sweet around them. "I am tired," Lily admitted, "but it is a good tired." "Then let us go to bed," Abram said, helping her to her feet. They went inside, banked to the fire, and climbed into the bed they had shared for over 3 decades. Abram pulled Lily close, her back to his chest, his arm draped over her waist. "I love you," he murmured into her hair. "I love you too," she replied, already half asleep. They drifted off together, 2 souls so completely intertwined that it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The years continued to roll by, gentle and sweet. Abram and Lily celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The cabin in the mountains had become a gathering place, a haven where family came together to share meals and stories and love. Abram's body began to slow with age, but his mind remained sharp and his love for Lily never wavered. He still told her every day that she was beautiful, still described the sunsets to her, still held her hand whenever they walked. Lily's hair turned completely silver, and her movements became slower. But her smile was as radiant as ever, and her love for Abram as fierce. On a spring morning, when Abram was 68 years old, he woke to find Lily still sleeping beside him. He watched her for a while, marveling at how, even after all these years, the sight of her filled him with such profound love and gratitude. She stirred and smiled, not opening her eyes. "I can feel you watching me," she said. "You are worth watching," he replied. She laughed and turned toward him, finding his face with her hands, as she had done thousands of times before. "What would I have done without you?" she asked. "You would have found another way," he said. "You are strong, Lily. You always have been." "But I am glad I did not have to," she said. "I am glad I found you, or you found me, however it happened." "I won you in a poker game," he reminded her with a grin. "Best hand you ever played," she teased. "Best hand I ever played," he agreed seriously. "It gave me everything that matters." They lay together in the morning light, and Abram felt a peace so deep and complete that it brought tears to his eyes. He had lived a good life, a full life. He had loved and been loved. He had raised children who were kind and strong. He had built a legacy that would continue long after he was gone. But most importantly, he had found Lily, and she had found him. Two lost souls who had somehow, miraculously, found their way to each other in the wilderness. It was a love story for the ages, born from the most unlikely of circumstances, a story that would be passed down through generations of Hawthornes. As they rose from bed and began another day, Abram took Lily's hand and brought it to his lips. "Thank you," he said, "for every single day we have had together." "And thank you," Lily replied, "for giving me a life I never dreamed possible, for loving me exactly as I am, for being my partner, my protector, and my best friend." They worked together, preparing breakfast, moving around each other with the ease of long practice. When the meal was ready, they sat at the table that Abram had built with his own hands all those years ago, and they ate together, talking and laughing as they always did. Later that day, Thomas came by with news that Margaret was expecting her third child. Samuel stopped in to show off a particularly fine pelt he had trapped. The cabin was full of life and love, and the continuation of the family that Abram and Lily had built. That evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Abram and Lily sat on their porch once more. Abram described the colors to her as he had done countless times, and she listened with the same attention and appreciation she always had. "You know," Abram said thoughtfully, "when Crawley said he would give me your papers that night, I was furious. The idea of anyone being owned like that made me sick. But now, looking back, I cannot help but be grateful, not for his cruelty, but for the fact that it brought you to me. Sometimes the worst circumstances can lead to the best outcomes." "I have thought the same thing," Lily admitted. "If he had not gambled me away, I might still be trapped in his boarding house, working myself to death trying to pay off a debt that would never be satisfied. Instead, I have had this beautiful life with you. I have been loved and cherished. I have children and grandchildren. I have been happier than I ever thought possible. Do you ever regret not having your sight back?" Abram asked gently. It was a question he had never asked before, afraid of the answer. Lily was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Sometimes I wish I could see our children's faces," she said honestly. "I wish I could watch our grandchildren play. I wish I could see the sunsets you described to me. But do I regret my life because I cannot see? No, never. My blindness has made me appreciate the world in different ways. I experience things through touch and sound and smell that sighted people often take for granted. And most importantly, it brought me to you. If I had to choose between having my sight and having you, I would choose you every time." Abram felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I love you," he said, his voice rough, more than words can ever express. "I know," she said softly. "I feel it every day in everything you do." and I love you just as much." They sat together as darkness fell, wrapped in the quilt, wrapped in each other's love. The stars came out, brilliant and countless in the mountain sky. Abram described them to Lily, telling her about the constellations, about the Milky Way stretching across the heavens. "It is beautiful," she said. "I can picture it in my mind." "You make everything beautiful," Abram replied, "just by being in it." As they finally rose to go inside for the night, Abram took one last look at the mountains, at the meadow, at the cabin that had been their home for so many years. This was his kingdom, small and remote, but filled with more love and happiness than most people experienced in a lifetime. Inside, they prepared for bed, moving through the familiar routine with ease. They climbed under the quilts that Lily had made with her own hands, and Abram pulled her close. "Sweet dreams, my love," he whispered. "Sweet dreams," she replied. And as they drifted off to sleep, safe and warm and together, they both knew that they had found something rare and precious. They had found true love, the kind that endures through hardship and trial, the kind that grows stronger with each passing year, the kind that lasts forever. The story of how Abram Hawthorne won a blind woman in a poker game, and then declared that anyone who wanted her back would have to go through his dead body had become legend in the mountains. But for Abram and Lily, it was not a legend. It was simply their life, their love story, their happily ever after. And they lived it fully, gratefully, joyfully, until their last days on earth, secure in the knowledge that they had found in each other something that most people spend their whole lives searching for, a love that was unconditional, unwavering, and eternal. The mountain cabin stood for generations after, a testament to the love of the man who built it and the woman who made it a home. And though Abram and Lily eventually passed from this world, their love lived on in their descendants, in the stories told around fires, in the values passed from parent to child. They had started with nothing but each other, two broken souls finding wholeness in unexpected places. And from that unpromising beginning, they had built a life full of love, laughter, family, and joy. It was a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unlikely circumstances, and that true love, when found, is worth fighting for with everything you have. Abram had said he would give her up over his dead body, and he had meant it. But in the end, he never had to make that sacrifice, because their love was so strong, so true, that nothing and no one could tear them apart. They had faced down every challenge together, and they had won. Their story became part of the fabric of the mountains themselves, a tale of courage and love and second chances. And anyone who heard it knew that they had witnessed something rare and beautiful, a love that conquered all, a love that lasted forever, a love that proved that sometimes, against all odds, fairy tales really do come true. As the final chapter of their lives drew to a close, Abram at 75 and Lily at 70, they faced the end with the same courage and grace with which they had lived. They were surrounded by family, by love, by the knowledge that they had lived good lives and left the world better than they found it. On a quiet evening in late summer, with the windows open and a gentle breeze flowing through the cabin, Abram lay in bed, holding Lily's hand. His children and grandchildren were gathered around, but he had eyes only for her. "I am not afraid," Lily whispered. "Not with you beside me." "I am not afraid either," Abram replied. "We have had a good run, you and I." "The best run," she agreed. "I would not change a single thing." "Nor would I," he said. They drifted off together that night, hands clasped, hearts entwined. And when morning came, and they had both passed peacefully in their sleep, the family mourned, but also celebrated. They celebrated a love that had spanned nearly 5 decades, a love that had created a legacy of kindness and strength, a love that would never truly die because it lived on in every person they had touched. Abram and Lily Hawthorne were buried side by side in the meadow they had loved so much, under the tall pines, with a view of the mountains stretching to the horizon. Their graves were marked with simple stones that bore their names, their dates, and a single inscription that Thomas had chosen. Together in life, together in death, forever in love. And so the story ended, as all good love stories should, with 2 souls who had found each other against all odds, who had loved each other completely and unconditionally, and who had built a life together that was rich and full and beautiful. They had started as a mountain man and a blind woman, brought together by chance and circumstance. But they had become something so much more. Partners, lovers, best friends, soulmates. Their legacy lived on in the generations that followed, in the cabin that still stood strong in the meadow, in the stories told and retold around family gatherings. And anyone who heard their story knew one thing for certain. True love, when found, is the greatest treasure of all, worth more than all the gold in California, worth more than anything else this world has to offer. Abram Hawthorne had won Lily Oaks in a poker game, but the truth was, they had both won. They had won a love that most people only dream of, a partnership that enriched every day of their lives, and a happiness that no circumstance, no hardship, no challenge could diminish. And when they demanded her back, he had indeed been willing to give her up only over his dead body. But because of his courage, his honor, and his unwavering love, it never came to that. Instead, they had lived long, full lives together, building something beautiful in the wilderness, proving that love really can conquer all. Their story was complete, their circle closed, their happily ever after achieved. And in the end, that was all that mattered. They had loved, and they had been loved, and they had made the world a little bit brighter for having been in it. The mountain man and his blind wife had found their forever, and it was everything they had ever dreamed of and more.